A Local History of the Church of Jesus Christ of Latter-day Saints in the Hull and Grimsby Area, 1844 to 1973. This is audio transcript, 9 of 9, Year History, 1967 to 1973. The audio transcripts were compiled by Sharon Bolton and produced by Michael Pennington. The audio transcripts of this history are available in audio CD, MP3 and Windows Media Player formats. In order to obtain copies of these audio transcripts, or print versions of this history, available in Microsoft Word or Adobe PDF formats, please contact Sharon Bolton by email at sharonmbolton@gmail.com. Year History 1967. The year began in West Hull, with a combined event on January 8. It was Herbert Robbie Robinson's 80th birthday, and also Tom and Ethel Bentley's silver wedding. Brother Robinson was an assistant clerk. He was, more importantly, a good musician, and played a medley of tunes for his guests to sing to. At the end of the month, the missionaries in Bridlington handed over the branch to local brethren. Trevor Staniforth succeeded Elder Laycock as branch president, with Dennis Tyndall as a councillor. In York, there was a change. Ian Swanee was called to the mission presidency, and Alwyn Pooley succeeded him as a councillor in the branch. In March, the Gold and Green Ball was held in York, with over 100 attending. There was also a district outing organised from there to Thornton-le-Dale and Flamingo Park. This included a hike from one place to the other. 120 saints walked, and were joined by another 50 when they arrived at the zoo. In April, district conference was held at Beverley, and 3 branch presidents were changed, in West Hull, Beverley, and York. Bernard Mann, from West Hull, Robert B. Thistleton from Beverley, and Reginald Turver from York, were all called to the district council, and were replaced by Peter J. Everett, Clive Blakeston and Alwyn B. Pooley respectively. Sister V. Thistleton was also released as Young Women's President, and was succeeded by Anne Swanee. Guest speaker at the conference was President Muck Miller, and his wife, of the London Temple. The attendance at priesthood and general sessions was not quite as good as usual, but the spirit was marvellous. Towards the end of the month, the MIA Speech Festival was held in Scarborough. The winners were West Hull. 2 other trophies were also presented on the same occasion, Beverley for drama, and to Scarborough for music. On May the 8th, there was another special 2-district conference in York Chapel, with President Mark E. Peterson. Another truly inspiring meeting, helping the 2 districts further along the road to statehood. Another inspiring meeting was held in York on April 9, when there was direct transmission of the General Conference from Salt Lake City. There were nearly 150 saints there. Reception was so good that you could easily imagine that you were in one of the halls around Temple Square listening. Sports activities were now developing into major events. A swimming gala in May was held in Madeley Street Baths in Hull, attracting over 100 saints, most of them taking part in some event or another. The organisers were Robert B. Thistleton, and President Swanee and his wife. In June, a cross-country run was held for males in York, from Bishopthorpe, down the river bank to the race course. The ladies meanwhile held a netball rally in the chapel car park. This event continued with table tennis in the York Chapel. Just over a week later, an athletics meeting was held on the Alderman Shore Track in East Hull, a really first-class sports centre, costing £3 for children and £6 for adults who participated. A similar event was also planned for the Aaronic boys to mark their commemoration weekend at Scarborough. Unfortunately, as the day was wet, alternative activities were held in the chapel. The Elders Quorum also had their day at Scunthorpe, with a dance, and games of badminton following their quorum meeting. The Relief Society went further afield for their highlight. A 2-day convention in Manchester on May 20 and the 21st, where they met members of their General Board. On July 15 to the 16th, The district road shows were held in East Hull, on the theme, How the West Was Won, with Beverley coming first. The following day was conference, introducing the new mission president, Leonard Robinson, and his wife. On August 22, another special conference was held for the two districts in York, with President Cullimore, an assistant to the Council of 12. Also during August, East Hull held a 12-hour open house, a missionary development introduced with the completion of the new chapels. They showed films every half hour throughout the day, with demonstrations and discussions. In September, Sister Minnie Jones of West Hull celebrated her 90th birthday, at a special Relief Society meeting that concluded with the preview for the following year. On September 16, the district primary festival was held in East Hull, organized by the president, Mary Mann, with stage shows in the chapel, and sports in the park. The Men and Gleaners, ages approximately 18 to 25, had a special event, a dance at York on October 7. It was a huge success, with 103 in attendance. On the 15th, the branch presidency in East Hull was changed at their branch conference. James F. Stone was called as president, with John C. Kennington and Graham F. Barber as councillors. At the beginning of the month, there was another direct line broadcast of General Conference to York Chapel. At the end of the month, being Halloween, appropriate social events took place, including one in West Hull, with three witches, June Bamfield, Sandra Nelson and Denise Morris, performing part of the Heath scene from Macbeth. A number of other social events also took place up to the end of the year, with harvest suppers, dinners and parties. Scarborough branch went to the Royal Hotel for theirs, and on New Year's Eve, being a Sunday, firesides were held late to finish at midnight, followed by food and socializing. 1968. In East Hull, the engagement was announced between Ian Taylor and Christine Stone. There was a district conference in January, when Peter J. Everett was released as branch president in West Hull, and called as councillor to President Holmes. William Fee was called as branch president, with Paul Knott and Terence Wileman as councillors. At the same conference, Tom Novice and Walter J. Childs were called to the district council. In February, John and Joyce Anderson were baptized in West Hull. They were related to Tom Novice, who had been converted by Valerie Hales, a local missionary. This brought the total of Tom's relations in the church to 26. The first quarter of the year was marked by a number of weddings. Valerie Whitehead, of East Hull, to David Smith. Patricia O'Neill to James Simpson, both of East Hull. Their wedding was marked by the hiring of an organ, and Peter Goodman, who played the organ at the City Hall, came to play for them. Jacqueline Bobby married Eddie Bentley, of West Hull. Her brother, Christopher, married Pat Layton of York. Janet Wright, of West Hull, married David Irving, a serving airman in the U.S. Air Force. In March, the Bridlington branch was closed down, as they had insufficient active priesthood to maintain it, and members were transferred to Scarborough. Here, in April, the branch president emigrated, and President Moore took his place. Harrogate branch president, Avery Coleman, was also released. He was serving at the American base at Mendwith Hill, and his term of duty had ended. He was replaced by Christopher Walker, who had been a councillor. Then in October, Ian Taylor became branch president in East Hull, with John C. Kennington and Graham Barber as councillors, when James Stone was called to the district council. Also in April, Geoffrey Dunning succeeded Clive Blakeston as Beverley's branch president. All of these changes in the district indicated considerable growth, both numerically and in spirituality. On the 12th of September, another apostle, Spencer W. Kimball, held another special conference to promote the Adventist statehood. There was also a steady growth in temple activity. In September, 28 saints traveled there in a coach to take part in temple work. Youth activities were many and varied. In January, the finals of the volleyball season were played, with teams from East Hull, West Hull, Beverley, and York. On May 9th, the district team played Leeds Stake at football, and on Easter Saturday, they also played the Sunderland Stake. A youth conference was held on May 11th and May 12th, with 75 youths attending. The restoration of the Aaronic priesthood was commemorated on the 18th, when a large group climbed up Oliver's Mount at Scarborough, then returned to the beach for games. At Whitsuntide, a smaller group went camping at Foulsake, a spot on the edge of the Yorkshire moors. This was repeated at the end of August. These were great opportunities for the boys to experience communal living and working, as well as playing and praying together. The athletics events were held in June, at the Alderman Neeshaw Stadium in East Hull, followed the same evening by the swimming gala at Medley Street Baths, and finishing with a dance in East Hull Chapel. A very full day's activities. The following week there was a games day at York, including a cross-country run and finishing with a dance in York Chapel. The road shows were held in East Hull. The most unusual event was from Harrogate, and consisted of Avery Coleman and his family of 10 children performing. They virtually were the Harrogate branch. Another barn dance was held 2 weeks later on a farm near Beverley Chapel, with over 150 attending. The younger children had their day, in September, when 120 spent the day in York, with a talent show in the chapel, and races and sports on a local school field. The building program was also continuing in the district. A site had been secured on Wetherby Road in Harrogate, and in September the branch held a cookout on the site, organised by Brother Meldrum, another member living at Menwith Hill. 40 district officers held a social at Beverley in November, an event organised by Geoffrey Dunning. The New Year's Eve dance, however, planned at Scarborough, had to be cancelled due to heavy snow. 1969. During the year, a series of meetings was held for Hull and Grimsby districts, in further preparation for stakehood. Marquis Peterson held a meeting for both districts in York, and on the 8th of May, President Kimball of the European Mission met Hull district. On the 12th of March, in Hull, President Kimball, and John Long his councillor, met Grimsby district in Scunthorpe. Previously on the 8th, having met with President Jenner and the saints from Grimsby, Scunthorpe, Cleethorpes, and Worksop. The Gainsborough saints were also included as they were attached to Scunthorpe. President Kimball returned in September to meet district leaders, and spell out those steps yet needed to be taken. Some of those steps were put into effect almost immediately. Executive secretaries were called as assistants to branch presidents. Seminary programs were started in September on a home study basis. The records of members were audited, with a special survey for child baptisms. A series of meetings in connection with the missionary program were held for all district presidencies of the North British Mission at the Mission Home, at Rossett Green in Harrogate. In genealogy, the fourth generation program was promoted, superseding the pedigree referral service and the 3 generations program. A wonderful meeting of men and gleaners was held in February, centering on temple marriage. There were several changes of branch presidents throughout the year. In Scarborough, Edward Reynolds was called in January as district mission president, and then on Easter Day, was called for the second time as branch president, with James Sweeting and Robert Fell as councillors. In West Hull, William Fee moved out of the branch to Surrey. Emil G. Hess, released from district presidency, was called to replace him, with Terence Wileman and Dennis Sanderson as councillors. Ian Taylor became branch president in East Hull in August, with Kenneth E. Brown and Graham Barber as his councillors. Other branch presidents were Christopher Walker in Harrogate, Geoffrey Dunning in Beverley and Alwyn B. Pooley in York. In November, Bridlington branch was also reopened, with Elder Jacobson as president, with his wife and 2 other missionaries. District conferences were held quarterly in 4 branches. In January, in York, with 290 saints. In Beverley in April with 323. in East Hull in July, with President Parsons of the London Temple with 381. And, in Scarborough in October with 324. The MIA festivals were also held in different branches, with music in West Hull, with Sister Marsden as the adjudicator, with drama in April, in Scarborough. There were road shows in East Hull in July, with 240 saints attending, and speeches held in York in November. There was also a convention held at Beverley in May, with a ramble on Saturday afternoon and a dance in the evening, and spiritual meetings including testimonies on Sunday morning. In November, the MIA centenary was celebrated in Beverley with a varied program conducted by James Stone with Walter J. Childs as host. Attendance was 160. Sports activities followed previous arrangements, with swimming at Madeley Street Baths in May, athletics on the Alderman Neeshore Ground in July, and a games tournament at York in March, for various ball games. There was also a mixed camp, combined with Leeds Stake, on August bank holiday at Rosedale, where 40 youths camped beside a stream in the valley. Other social activities included a Valentine's dance at Beverley, organised by Robert Thistleton, which unfortunately coincided with another heavy snowfall which cut attendance. A garden party was organised in East Hull in May, which coincided with the Lord Mayor's parade, and attendance was boosted by the watching crowds. The annual Golden Green Ball was held in York in April, with an attendance of 190. Also in May, the restoration of the Aaronic priesthood was commemorated, the youth visiting Hull docks, followed by an old-time dance in East Hull. There were 3 well-known sisters who died during the year. Minnie Jones, their oldest member, died in January, aged 86. Maria Bike, who had many children and grandchildren in the church, died in April. In November, Denise Morris died in London. She had been travelling as an au pair with various families, and had been as far as India, but brought back to Hull for burial. 1970. The new year began in January with the death of Blanche Myers, and also of President Mackay, and the calling of a new president and prophet, Joseph F. Smith. The first district conference was held in York on January 4, when 3 brethren, Jack Spur, Thomas Novice, and Michael Bamfield, were sustained to the district council. Council meetings at that time were held twice monthly in Beverley Chapel. A fortnight later Ian Taylor was released as branch president in East Hull, and Kenneth E. Brown, who was his councillor, was sustained. That was the same day that President David O. Mackay died, and Joseph F. Smith became president of the church. The month ended with the wedding of Dennis Sanderson and Olga Hess, in West Hull, on the 31st. The District Drama Festival was also held on the same evening. In March, the district had a visit from Paul H. Dunn, one of the general authorities who came to East Hull. Another visitor was Elder Curtis, who met district priesthood leaders in May at Scunthorpe. One major event for the youth was held 2 days later at Whitby, where they held their own conference. There was also a beach party planned in June to be held at Aldborough, but it was thwarted by the high tide. A ween roast, better known as a campfire with sausages, was held instead, on the cliff top. There was a grand Sunday school outing held for 3 branches, at Bridlington, where Elder Smith was now branch president, with his family and the Staniforths being the mainstay of the branch. Besides district council meetings, a number of other events were held at Beverley, including a farewell social evening for the mission president and his family, President Robinson. The road show was also held at Beverley in July, and a music festival took place there in May. District priesthood meetings were also held there, and the second district conference in April. On September 13th, the East Hull Chapel was dedicated, and shortly afterwards, the venue district council meetings were transferred there. The various auxiliaries had been holding their leadership meetings at different chapels around the district and on different days. The holding of one combined meeting was started in September, with the meeting held in Brunswick Avenue School in Hull, using the West Hull Chapel as a nursery. Building work was also started in Harrogate in the spring on their site in Wetherby Road, and working parties were organised from other units to work there. Their meeting place was at Towering House, which was a premises used by bookmakers downstairs during the week. 1971. The main event of the year was the first Area General Conference at Manchester on 28th and the 29th of August, with President Joseph F. Smith and many of the general authorities attending. A double-decker bus travelled from Hull, plus several cars, and the Saints were found lodgings for the night with various members in small guest houses in and around Manchester. One of the happiest people there from Hull was Charlotte Novice, an arthritic cripple in a wheelchair, who had recently been to the temple for her endowment, and now she was shaking the Prophet's hand. That association with the First Presidency and Council was a great thrill to all those who attended. Within the district there were again 4 district conferences, one being on Easter Day in York. The district president had a series of meetings at the mission home at Rossett Green in Harrogate, with all the district presidents in the mission, all very inspirational, and all designed to further prepare them for statehood. In Bridlington, a recently endowed local brother, John S. Saul, was called as branch president in October, where he was to remain for just 1 year until ill health overtook him. A new branch president was also called in Harrogate, as their new chapel was nearing completion in May. There were 2 weddings in Hull during the year, of Judith Bentley to a non-member David Coombs, in January, and of Michael Keith to Valerie Bennett in November, and one tragic death, of Leslie Medcalf, when his car went out of control and hit a road bridge in July. 1972. In January, the first district conference had an attendance of 500. It was 566 in October 1971, and on the 1st May, was 519. All these totals indicated the continuing growth of the district. There were several changes made in May. In West Hull, Peter J. Everett was released as branch president, and he was then called as executive secretary, while Dennis Sanderson became the new branch president. In Beverley, Alan Kennington was called as branch president, and Gerald Render in East Hull. Kenneth Brown was now councillor to President Holmes, with Alwyn Pooley, from York, as the other councillor. The Hull Saints were also divided into 3 units, with John Lutkin as branch president of North Hull. This unit was started with a Sunday school in Ferrans Primary School in May, with Charles Driscoll conducting it. The branch was opened fully with its own president in July, and was based in Kinloss Junior School. This brought the total number of units in the district to 11, being Beverley, Bridlington, Grimsby, Harrogate, East, North, and West Hull, Scarborough, Scunthorpe and York. At the same district council meeting that these changes were made, Pauline Dayton, a returned missionary from York, attended to render an account of her mission to Dublin and Belfast. At the beginning of the year, the elders of the district were formed into 3 quorums, at Grimsby, Hull and York, with the Hull second quorum meeting in East Hull on 21st of January, with a dinner dance the following weekend. In the autumn, a number of further changes were made. John Saul, the Bridlington branch president, was taken to hospital, so Trevor Staniforth was called to succeed him, with a newly ordained elder, Frederick Place, as a councillor. In Grimsby, Howard Lloyd was called as branch president to succeed Arthur Jenner, who became the president of the first quorum of elders, and was later called to the district council. Mary Mann, who had been district primary president for a number of years, was released, being replaced by Janet Lloyd of the Grimsby branch. There were many things for which the primary were grateful to Sister Mann for, including a grand festival in East Hull, plus activities in East Park held there in July. There were also a number of home primaries around the district, including Sutton Park, Bransholme, Bilton and Brough. There were 2 regional meetings held during the year at Huddersfield, with Derek Cuthbert, the regional representative, with one in May on the theme, the church hath need of every member, and in November, on the theme of the watchman. District presidents' meetings also continued at Trossett Green. On the building programme, work continued on the Harrogate Chapel and at Scunthorpe. A major repair had to be effected, as one of the main wooden beams in the roof was found to be rotten. After the work was completed, Geoffrey Walsh, of York, who was a painter and decorator, redecorated the building. Youth activities continued to flourish with the MIA festivals and the road show. These activities were coordinated with the seminary program, which was supervised by David Cook. They also had a seminary education day in July in Manchester, that same Saturday also being the wedding day for Geoffrey Thomas and Heather Anderson in West Hull. An M-Men Gleaner weekend was also held in July, and every unit had some students in the seminary program, but Worksop, due to the distances involved, were linked to Sheffield. One special event held in July was the 21st birthday party for Stephen Aubrey, held in East Hull. Stephen had emigrated in 1964, with his parents to Utah, and had just finished a 2-year mission back in England as his birthday came around. The year ended on a very sad note, with the death on Christmas Day of Charlotte Novice, the crippled lady who met the Prophet in Manchester in 1971. She was the mother of a large extended family, with a total of 26, of who had joined the church in the 4 or 5 years since she herself was baptized. 1973. The district was now only 4 months from statehood, and preparations for the event continued, with 2 further meetings at the mission home in Harrogate, and more reorganization within the district council. Bernard Mann, Howard Lloyd, Wilfred Ely and Thomas Novice had been released, and Arthur Jenner and Harry Lytle were called to join Geoffrey Dunning, Charles Ellerington, Garth Godare, Emil G. Hess, Neil Roy, Robert B. Thistleton, Christopher Walker, and Geoffrey Walsh, these 10 men later being ordained as high priests to form the Stake High Council. 2 branch presidents were changed early in the year. In North Hull, Trevor Waldwin was called as John Lutkin moved out of Hull, and Adrian Miller was called in Harrogate. On April 8, it was General Conference, and a relay of it was sent to York Chapel, using slides to illustrate Salt Lake City, Temple Square and the Tabernacle, as the saints listened direct to the presiding brethren. 2 weeks later, Elder Marquis Peterson, of the Council of 12, with his wife Emma, came to East Hull, and on the 23rd of April, conducted a special fireside, followed by personal interviews with each district officer in turn. Then on the 26th, the Hull district was formally closed with the release of its officers, and the Hull Stake of Zion was organized, thus realizing the dream of many thousands of saints who have lived and served and worshipped in this area for nearly 130 years. In the last week of April of 1973, Elder Marquis Peterson, of the Council of 12 Apostles, visited the Hull district to organize a new Stake of Zion. On the 23rd of April, a special fireside meeting was held in the East Hull Chapel, when Elder Peterson met many of the saints of the district. Then on the 24th and 25th, he and other leaders interviewed the priesthood of the district, and called those who were to lead in the new stake. Then on the evening of Thursday the 26th, introduced by the mission president, Henry B. Jenkins, and inspired by a combined choir made up of choirs from Grimsby, East Hull, Scunthorpe, and York, led by Gillian Skelton, Elder Peterson put the proposal that the Hull Stake of Zion be formed. He spoke of the necessity of unity, and of sustaining those in authority. He pointed out that the church was not a democracy, run by majority votes, but a kingdom, ruled over by the Lord through his chosen servants who made the decisions. As the kingdom of God, we operate and labor by inspiration. The Lord will fulfill if we do our part. We shall live by every word, and to do this we must know what the word of God is and need to read some part of Scripture every day. Then, as we grow stronger, the stake will also grow. It was proposed that the stake consist of 10 units, Grimsby, East Hull, West Hull, Scunthorpe and York as wards, with Beverley, Bridlington, North Hull, Harrogate and Scarborough as independent branches. Worksop, formerly in the district, was asked, and accepted that they be joined to Nottingham stake. Ian David Swanee was sustained as president of the Hull England stake of Zion, with Norman J. H. Wilkinden as his first councillor and Alwyn B. Pooley as his second, with Jack Spur as stake clerk, John C. Kennington as assistant clerk, and Walter J. Childs as stake executive secretary. The former district president James Holmes was sustained as stake patriarch. Brethren for the stake high council were next sustained. They were Geoffrey Dunning, Charles Zellerington, Garth Goodacre, Emil G. Hess, Arthur Jenner, Barry Lydell, Neil S. Roy, Robert B. Thistleton, Christopher Walker, and Geoffrey Walsh. All of these brethren were to be ordained high priest to form the high priest quorum. Brethren for the bishopric of the 5 wards were next sustained by their respective members. Kenneth E. Brown as Bishop of Hull East Ward, with George Wilkinson as first councillor, Peter Everett as second councillor, Frank Pearson as clerk, Howard Lloyd as Bishop of the Grimsby and Cleethorpes Ward, with Charles B. Cook as first councillor, Alan Smith as second councillor and Jack O. Gilmore as clerk, Arthur Thompson as Bishop of Scunthorpe Ward, with David T. Wood as first councillor, Derek E. Rogers as second councillor and Douglas Johnson as clerk, Dennis Sanderson as Bishop of West Hull Ward, with Geoffrey T. Thomas as first councillor, David Mount as second councillor, and Frederick Hopkin as clerk, Mervyn J. Buckingham as Bishop of York Ward, with John Gear as first councillor, Reginald Turver as second councillor, and Ernest Draper as clerk, Alan J. Kennington as president of Beverley Branch, Trevor V. Staniforth as president of Bridlington, James A. Mellor as president of Harrogate, Trevor Baldwin as president of North Hull, Edward Reynolds as president of Scarborough. All of the brethren were to be ordained high priests and bishops to their office. After remarks and testimonies from the new stake presidency, Patriarch Derek Cuthbert, assistant to the 12 apostles, Bishop Kenneth E. Brow, Sister M. Peterson, Sister Henkins, and President Jenkins, who had conducted the meeting, the hymn was sung "What Was Witnessed in the Heavens," and the meeting closed at 9:15 in the evening. That concludes audio transcript, 9 of 9, of a local history of the Church of Jesus Christ of Latter-day Saints in the Hull and Grimsby area, 1844 to 1973.